Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear doesn't just sound like a movie, it's real. It's the story of a maximum security prison that was supposed to be escape-proof, a convicted felon who vanished like smoke, and the corruption he dragged into the light. This is the prison escape that exposed everything. It began before sunrise on a January morning in 2013 at Iron Creek Correctional Facility, a concrete fortress on the windswept plains of Wyoming. The compound rose out of frozen earth like a bunker from another era. 30-foot walls bristling with razor wire, watchtowers with rotating floodlights, motion sensors stitched through the snow, and cameras watching every inch of concrete and steel. Inside, nearly 3,000 men counted the days they would never get back. Killers, gang lieutenants, and lifers who measured time in the echo of steel doors. At 6 a.m., the head count started like it always did. Boots down the tier, clipboard taps, numbers called, faces confirmed. But at cell 214B, an officer peered through a narrow slot, scanned a neat bunk, a folded blanket, and an empty space where a man should have been. The door was locked from the outside. No damage, no tunnel. The slot snapped shut. The radio crackled. One name was missing, Ethan Rowe. On paper, Rowe looked like the kind of man the system swallowed whole. Before prison, he'd been a mechanical engineer in Denver, soft-spoken, precise. The sort who fixed leaky faucets and read manuals for fun. The 2008 crash hit like a storm. Job gone, marriage gone, savings gone. Debt turned into late notices into panic. Panic into a single violent mistake. A robbery that spiraled, a gun drawn, a life ruined. 25 years at Iron Creek. But inside, Rowe didn't posture or fight. He kept to himself, repaired lights in the chapel, tuned electric locks in the admin wing, learned which systems were ancient and which were brittle. Guards liked him because he worked. Supervisors liked him because he never asked for favors. He listened more than he spoke. And all the while, he was paying attention. When security pulled video from the night before the head count, they watched Rowe pace in his cell at 3:25 a.m., rub his hands, sit, stand, sit again. Then the feed shivered into static. 5 minutes of snow. When the picture returned, the bed was empty. The alarm triggered a full lockdown. Sirens screamed across the yard. Steel rolled through door frames like thunder. Teams swept the tiers, the laundry, the kitchen, the tunnel that carried steam to the outer buildings. The warden, a man who quoted policy like scripture, ordered a perimeter sweep and a double count. Dogs worked the fence line. Nothing. By noon, the FBI had landed in Cheyenne. Their first theory was obvious: inside help. No one waltzes out of a supermax without a badge or a key. But the question wasn't just how he got out. It was why the cameras died at precisely the right moment. On day 3, a technician from Wycor Security Solutions, the private vendor contracted to maintain Iron Creek's cameras and electronic locks, quietly told an agent that 2 cameras in Rowe's block had been manually disabled for calibration the previous week. He had filed a maintenance ticket that vanished from the system the next day. The FBI seized the access logs. Someone with admin credentials had overridden those exact cameras on the night of the escape. The account belonged to Captain Dennis Hale, the night shift commander. Hale had 14 years in, clean evaluations, a neat house on a cul-de-sac, 2 kids, and a Labrador named Max. He said the override was routine testing. The problem with routine is that it leaves a trail. Financial records showed 5 wire transfers, $8, $400 each, into an account controlled by an LLC incorporated in Nevada 5 months earlier. An LLC with no website, no employees, and a mailbox in a strip mall. The shell company had a single client, Wycor Security. Hale said it was a loan, then a consulting fee. Then he wanted a lawyer. On day 5, a call came from a farm outside Boise, Idaho. A rancher found a stranger sleeping in his barn under a pile of tarps, half frozen, shoes caked with snow, a duffel at his feet. Agents rolled in before dawn. The man stepped into the cold, raised his hands, and nodded. "You finally showed up," he said. Ethan Rowe didn't fight. He sat on a hay bale while agents opened his bag. A prepaid flip phone, a bundled hoodie, a notebook with dates and numbers, and a USB drive in a plastic specimen tube. In a federal interview room the next day, Rowe explained in a steady voice how an engineer ended up orchestrating the most humiliating escape in Iron Creek's history. Months earlier, he'd been repairing an electrical panel that fed the admin servers. The panel shouldn't have been connected to anything sensitive, but a dying relay coughed out a burst that flicked his diagnostics into a maintenance network. He saw invoices flash on a screen where invoices shouldn't live. Pre-populated bills with identical line items. Tests marked pass. During hours the cameras were dark. The Y-Core logo stamped on forms that never passed procurement. He reported it, quietly, to a supervisor who told him he must have misread. The next week, Rowe's work pass was cut without explanation. A guard he didn't recognize told him to keep his head down. He started overhearing jokes about overtime that pays twice, about contractors who brought coffee and envelopes and walked out with signatures. He learned which guards partnered for certain shifts, which doors stuck when the weather turned, which cameras blinked to black when no one should have touched them. When Hale approached him, subtle at first, then direct, about calibration windows and blind corners, Rowe realized he wasn't paranoid. He was in the way. The escape wasn't a sprint to freedom, he told the agents. It was a trap. Hale wanted him to disappear. Y-Core wanted to keep billing. The prison wanted quiet. They all wanted him gone in a way that looked like his idea. Rowe pretended to accept. He let Hale believe 5 minutes of darkness would be more than enough. Then he did what engineers do. He planned for failure, and he built backups. In the weeks before the cameras died, he gathered what he could without tripping alerts. Photocopies slipped into tool bags, printouts folded into manuals, server snapshots written to tiny drives and hidden behind junction plates. When the window opened at 3:27 a.m., he didn't race for the fence. He went to 3 places in sequence: a junction closet outside admin, a crawl space beneath the infirmary, and a maintenance corridor where the yard feeds met the perimeter. At each, he pulled a cache, bagged it, and moved. He had memorized the sweep arc of the nearest tower. He had measured the timing on the motion sensors with a broken mop handle and counted to 92. He had watched wind push snow like a painter brushes powder. The human eye hates patterns that don't belong. He made sure his pattern looked like nothing at all. He walked out alone while a guard whistled 2 tiers away. He followed a buried utility line to a culvert, crawled under a frozen grate, and emerged in a drainage gulch a quarter mile from the wall. He kept walking until the sun stained the rim of the world gray. In Boise, agents cracked the USB drive. It wasn't just spreadsheets. It was scanned contracts, internal emails, and audio from a mic hidden in a mop closet where Hale took calls, his voice clear as glass. "They'll never catch it," Hale said on a recording. "It's our system." Another file held a security test checklist, marked complete on nights when 3 cameras were provably dead. Another showed Y-Core invoices copy-pasted month after month with serial numbers that didn't exist. Reporters smelled blood in the water. The Denver Ledger ran the first splash: "Escape blows open prison graft." The story ricocheted from local TV to national morning shows. Families of inmates described guards who winked and walked. Former officers talked about a culture where overtime was currency and silence was survival. The governor appeared on camera looking carved from stone and promised audits, accountability, and answers. Inside Iron Creek, the warden resigned. The lieutenant who signed off on Y-Core's work schedule took leave and never came back. 7 officers were indicted on fraud, bribery, or falsification charges. Hale was arrested exiting his attorney's office with a duffel bag and a passport application in his car. Y-Core's headquarters in Salt Lake City was raided. 2 executives disappeared to countries without extradition, and hearings broadcast to living rooms across the country. State legislators asked how a prisoner could trigger more oversight in a week than a decade of inspectors. A DOJ report later described Iron Creek as a closed ecosystem incentivizing opacity. Too few eyes, too many profits, and a contract culture that rewarded the cheapest bid and punished whistleblowers. Rowe sat through none of that spectacle. He was charged with felony escape, possession of stolen property, and interference with government operations. His lawyer, pro bono and exhausted, argued that felony escape laws were written for men running from accountability. Not toward it. The prosecutor called him manipulative and dangerous, a thief who lucked into a scandal and spun it to his advantage. The trial moved with the slow gravity of courtrooms everywhere. Jurors listened to audio clips where Hale discussed windows for calibration. They saw invoices with duplicate stamps. They watched a forensic accountant explain how money washed from a state check into a contractor, into a shell LLC, into a captain's personal account within 72 hours. They watched an FBI agent point to a chain of custody log that never should have been signed by a vendor. And they saw Ethan Rowe seated quietly, hands folded, a man without swagger, talking about error codes and relay failures, and why a system will always do what it's designed to do, even when the design is corruption. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The judge read the verdict slowly. Guilty of escape. Not guilty of possession of stolen property. Not guilty of interference. The courtroom murmured like wind in dry grass. The judge looked at Rowe for a long time and said, "I do not reward breaking the law, but I will not ignore context." He sentenced Rowe to time served and 5 years probation, with credit for cooperation. Outside, microphones bloomed like flowers. A reporter shouted, "Was it worth it?" Rowe paused at the steps, met the lens, and said, "You can't fix a system from inside its walls." Then he disappeared. Some say he went north. Some say he works under another name repairing machines that don't lie. The aftershocks didn't vanish with him. Congress introduced procurement reforms that forced any private corrections, contractor touching surveillance, locks, or monitoring to submit to third-party financial audits and continuous compliance testing. What people in the hallways started calling the Rowe Clause. States tightened chain of custody rules and banned vendors from ever signing internal logs. Whistleblower protections expanded for corrections staff and inmates alike. And Iron Creek, wounded and radioactive, limped through 2 more winters before the state shut it down. Today the walls still stand, but the towers are empty and the floodlights stutter in the wind. Weeds push through asphalt. Snow piles against a gate that no one opens. If you walk the perimeter road at dawn, you can hear metal ticking as it cools, the sound of a machine that ran too long on lies. Agents who work the case still call it the strangest of their careers. A convict who escaped not to vanish, but to bear witness. A prison that couldn't keep a man in or the truth out. A contractor that treated public money like a private well. And a culture that forgot the simplest rule in engineering and injustice. You get exactly what your system is built to deliver. Build for profit without light, and you'll grow rot. Build for silence, and you'll hear nothing until the alarms fail. Build a cage without accountability, and one day the cage will open for the wrong reason. That's why this story matters long after the headlines fade. Because it isn't just about Ethan Rowe, or Dennis Hale, or a company called Wycor. It's about the invisible choices that stitch together institutions, the shortcuts, the quiet approvals, the favors that turn into invoices, and the single person who decides no more. Rowe wasn't a hero in his past. He wasn't innocent. But on a freezing morning in a place designed to break men down, he chose to break a pattern instead. He chose to step into the dark, carry proof into the wind, and trust that the truth would travel farther than he could. And it did. If this story shook you, subscribe and turn on notifications, because next time we're stepping into a disappearance so clean it fooled the experts, until one overlooked clue rewrote the entire case. Somewhere, another system is hiding what it's built to hide, and somewhere, another person is about to turn the lights on.